So the Tshwane Council is expected to elect a new speaker on Monday, that's tomorrow. Thereafter, the new speaker will preside over the election of an executive mayor to replace Murunwa Makwarela. Now, he faces, of course, several criminal charges for supplying falsified and fraudulent documentation in a bid to clear himself. Our reporter, Moloko Moloto, is tracking developments, and he joins me now. Thank you so much for joining us, Moloko. Do we know who the political parties are fielding as candidates for the speaker and mayoral positions?
Hello, Baran. Well, what we know is that, as you correctly said, Council is going to sit tomorrow to elect the new Council speaker, who needs to also preside over the Council meeting that will then elect the executive mayor. But I've been told by the spokesperson of the city, Selby Bukaba, that the election of the new executive mayor will not happen immediately after the election of the speaker tomorrow. The new speaker will still have to come up with a new date during which the new executive mayor would be elected. Chances are that might happen sometime this week, possibly on Wednesday, but that is the decision that the new speaker will have to take. In terms of who the candidates are for the position of speaker tomorrow, from the coalition group that is led by the Democratic Alliance, so far we don't know who they are going to be fielding. I spoke obviously to the leader of the caucus on the DA side, Celia Brink, who told me that they have not decided. That decision will be announced by the coalition group. In other words, we don't know as to who exactly is going to be contesting from the side of the DA. From the side of the coalition group that is led by the African National Congress, according to George Machila, who is the secretary of the ANC in the region, they are going to be fielding a candidate from the African Transformation Movement to contest for the position of a speaker. Let's listen to Celia Brink, who, by the way, is going to be the candidate for the Democratic Alliance-led coalition for the position of executive mayor. That we know. We know that he lost that contest a few days ago to Dr. Murunwa Makwarela, who is no longer in the position of executive mayor because he seemingly lied when he submitted that apparent fake document. Let's listen to what Celia Bring says in terms of their approach and strategy as they go into the voting for the speaker, because it seems that the numbers are going to be problematic as they go in there, because the last time that coalition led by the DA was hoping that Celia Bring would be elected, but then there was a surprise. Some members of that coalition that is led by the DA instead voted for Murunwa Makwarela.
It's important to look at the numbers in council, and the multi-party coalition, which includes the DA, Action SA, Freedom Front Plus, ACDP, IFP, we have a majority in the council as it is, of 108 seats. So whatever has happened, whatever persuasion has occurred, behind the scenes, under the table, the point is that is the voting bloc with a majority. There's no dispute between the leaders of those parties. We are all united behind one candidate for mayor and one candidate that is soon to be announced for speaker. And so the other political parties in council, especially the ANC and the EFF, must be open about what their plan is. If they do not have a majority in council, how are they going to govern the city? What is their plan? What responsibility are they going to take? The disastrous candidate Murunwa Makwarela that they produced the last time was done at the last minute. We know that Premier Panyaza Lesufi came in not as an observer to the council meeting, but to facilitate negotiations to get Dr. Makwarela elected. He's completely washed his hands of responsibility of this entire situation, the instability of council. So the DA and our coalition partners will clean house, will make sure that we have discipline. We've opened the criminal charges. It is now clear that he has falsified a court order effectively. That's very serious. very strong evidence. We must let the law enforcement bodies do what they have to. And if we have to claim, I think there's a very strong claim that at least some of the money that he earned as a councillor and as a speaker through his fraudulent misrepresentation must be paid back to the city. The most important priority is to get a handle on the finances of the city, because if we don't ensure value for the people's money in the city, it will start affecting service delivery.
Moloko, just explain to us this issue of the polygraph test that has been done by the DA. Of course, they're basically pointing at some officials there in their party that could have voted to install Murunwa Makwarela as mayor.
Well, Baron, after some of the councillors in the DA-led coalition voted against the decision of their coalition partners in support of Dr. Murunwa Makwarela, the caucuses of the DA, Action SA, Freedom Front Plus, and all the other parties that are on that side decided that there must be a polygraph test to find out who this delinquent, in the inverted commas, councillors who defied the party line were. Now, I spoke earlier when I spoke to Celia Brink. I asked him specifically about the outcomes or results of that test. And he said, look, I'm not going to talk about that. And I then went to speak to Josh Machila, who is the secretary of the ANC in the Tshwane region. He dropped the names. He says that polygraph test which they have done did not seem to give them the results that they were hoping. According to Machila, the people who were identified as having voted to elect Makwarela, among them was, according to Machila, Randall Williams, the former mayor of Tshwane, the former speaker of Tshwane, who is a member of the DA. Now, those are the names that were dropped by Machila of the ANC. And he's saying now the difficulty is that the DA-led coalition will now have to take action against those particular individuals who were allegedly identified by the polygraph. I reached out to these two identified councillors. Randall Williams, unfortunately, his phone rang unanswered. He remains a councillor there, couldn't get to speak to him. But I managed to speak to Matebe, and who said, look, I am not authorized to speak by the party, and in any way those particular results have not been issued. I can't speak, I cannot comment altogether. Now, maybe let's listen to George Machila, who was also telling us about their strategy, their approach as they go into tomorrow's council meeting to elect the speaker and later to elect the executive mayor of Tshwane. Importantly, George Machila is saying, as the ANC, and he also spoke for the EFF, they are not going to be fielding their own candidate as the two parties. Even for the mayoral position, they will give that space both for the speaker and the executive mayor positions to the smaller parties. They are working together. Let's listen to the ANC's George Machila.
There are not going to be any changes. We are still on 112. Unfortunately, the DA came up with their own tactics of polygraphy and so on, but it dealt with their own senior leaders, like your Councillor Williams Randall, who's the former mayor, the current member of the Mayoral Committee for Finance, Peter Sutton, Councillor Matebe. So all of them are involved. So they don't have anywhere to run. I mean, we are going to take it. It's going to be 112 again. If not 112, it's going to be over.
Well, Moloko, this is quite interesting. High-ranking DA officials voting against or voting in favour of Makwarela. It quite thickens the plot, rather, doesn't it?
Well, it does, Baron. And the DA's decision to keep quiet about this isn't helping either, because all we are left with here now is speculation. The ANC is saying, throwing the cat among the pigeons, dropping the names. There are two possibilities here. One is that indeed possibly those councillors who have been named by the ANC possibly voted for Makwarela. But the other possibility is that they did not, and that the polygraph got it completely wrong. And as we stand here, we don't know until we wait for the DA to give us the official results of that polygraph test. But also, if you look at the fact that they are going, because none of the councillors who voted during last week's election of Makwarela, none of them have been fired. They remain in council and they are still going to vote. And we know that voting takes place through secret ballot if there are more than one contenders for the position of Speaker and Executive Mayor. So the coalition that is led by the DA still relies on the very same councillors who voted. Some of them, we know they voted for Makwarela. Is there going to be a repeat of what happened when Makwarela was voted in? When they vote for the Speaker, will the very same councillors who defied the DA coalition party line vote for Celia Brink, or will they vote for the Executive Mayor who would be nominated by the DA-led coalition? That drama is going to unfold right before our eyes. But as you heard, both the ANC and the DA are confident that they will be able to wrest each other and get hold of the mayoral chain. However, we know that the people who are suffering would be the residents and the ratepayers of Tshwane, who by now do not have the Speaker and do not have the Executive Mayor. And if these two positions are not filled, it's obvious that governance is going to suffer, because there are certain things that they would not be able to sign off on, and as a result, governance and the municipality will ground to a halt.
Thank you so much, Moloko Moloto, for that comprehensive insight into all the drama there in Tshwane.